Hold on. Can you see my slides? Yes, okay, great. Okay, so wow, two great presentations by my advising colleagues, Curtis and Yuri. In my part, I like to talk about the why and how of ways to implement or integrate concept of advising in classroom activities. So towards the end, I also like everyone to try to one of the activities today. So I welcome active participation from everyone then. Okay, so let's start. So after Curtis and Yuri's talk, you now know that learner autonomy and advising in language learning are keys to future English language education. And so the one criteria we need to develop autonomous learners is very simple and is something that we engage in every day, and that is dialogue. So that dialogue can include dialogue with others and dialogue with oneself. And the keywords in advising in language learning are reflection, to support learners feel their a little sense of achievements, even a very small one, develop learners' metacognition, the ability to look oneself from above, and to develop lifelong learning skills that learners can use beyond language learning. Okay, so how can we implement advising concepts in classrooms? But before that, first, let's think about why do we want to implement concepts of advising in classroom? So to answer why we want to implement this concept in classroom, first we need to look at our learners. Do they really need to be exposed to the concept of advising? So let's start looking at some of the comments that we often hear from our learners. I'm allergic to English. My friends are getting high scores. I'm a failure. I plan, but I get easily demotivated. So these might be very common things. And this situation is depicted in literature too. And here are some of the terms used to describe Japan's English language education. Exam hell, English for exams, motivational wasteland, and the permanent state of crisis. So in Japan, English is a must-have basic educational skill, and English is something that is externally assessed. And internal feeling is often not recognized. So some learners can find meaning in studying English. So therefore, learners become passive towards learning. They wait for instructions and have little sense of ownership towards their learning, and thus maybe little improvement in their language skills. So what's missing from language education in Japan? And that is, as this is our topic today, learner autonomy. And so we want to reach out to more learners. So what are the merits of bringing in concept of advising in classroom? First, we can provide opportunities to introduce learner autonomy for all learners if we bring into classroom. Talking about learning is rare, so we can make the talk about their learning very open in classroom. And we can develop supportive community of learners. So they have many opportunities for peer reflection. And so maybe some of you know, but I was a full-time learning advisor for 11 years, but I wanted to reach out to more learners beyond advising sessions. And so as a result of my desire to reach out to more learners, I moved to a position where I can implement advising concepts into classroom. Okay, so going into classroom, okay, so dialogue and reflection are important, but if we go into the classroom and say to our students, okay, everyone, let's reflect, it won't work. Reflection is important, but students do not know what reflection is. They don't know how to reflect, right? So where do we start from here? Okay, so let's look at the core issue. The core issue is that especially Japanese language learners face is that English is mainly assessed externally by like tests, scores, teachers, parents, and the learning process is often like something foreign to them. And so what we need is to help learners move from evaluating themselves, not just through external assessment, but to be able to value their internal feelings and instincts. In other words, the very first thing we need is to support learners to be able to talk with themselves and self-evaluate their learning. Okay. So the very first step is that what do we need to do is that we need learners to be able to feel and express about oneself. In other words, we need to develop classroom activities that respects and values learners' inner feelings. Okay, so the first step is to create a time in your lesson for students to reflect, a time to think about their learning. And that can be just 5 minutes of your class time. And it should be something really, really easy to engage in. For example, if it's just before the class finishes, you could ask students to write smiley marks in their notebook on how much they are satisfied with their concentration level in class, or ask them to write how much % of effort they put in today to their speaking in English in class, or how much % they want to aim for in the next class. Okay, so something very accessible is good to start. Let me introduce you one activity I always do at the beginning of my class, and you can also try. Okay, so can you pick a color that best describes you now, your feelings now, not your favorite color, but how you feel now? So let me see, for example, for me, my color now is second from the bottom, second row from the bottom, and fourth from the right, kind of red color, okay? Because I'm excited to be here with many people and share my passion for this field and to be able to share and welcome everyone to this field. So how about you? Is anyone would like to share your color? You can tell us by saying like how many from the bottom or top or from the right or in the center. Anybody would like to share? Maybe chat or any. Oh, great. Thank you. Middle row, fourth from the right. Middle row, fourth from the right. 1, 2, 3. Oh, okay, greenish. Okay. And that's Henry and Gretchen also light green colors because, oh, okay, thank you. Yes, so this is a great activity. As students have to, first of all, students have to learn how to see the location of their color from a distance, saying like second from the left, top row. That's not easy thing for students at first, but if you do it every time, students get really used to it, and they also express their current feelings. And this also helps students in our class learn about each other's situation. Oh, so this is related to expressing one's feeling and thoughts, and it can be a great speaking activity at the start of the class. So this is one of the activities I always do with my students. Okay, so next, also in classroom, you can use advising skills to listen and empower your learners. So this will be a review from Yuri's session, if you remember. She explained really well. So for example, how can you reply when a student comes to you and said, I'm so tired, I don't feel like studying? Okay, so the student come and say that. Well, we tend to say, oh, no worries, you'll be fine, genki dashite. But this is not an advising approach. We want to, if the student says, I'm so tired, I don't feel like studying, then the teacher can also say, oh, you're tired. I see you were working hard today. Okay, so you can use advising skills in every interactions that you have with your students in classrooms. Okay, so what are the roles of teachers? So the roles are that you will need to set up an environment where learners feel safe to express their feelings and thoughts about their learning, building trusting relationship with the students. Okay, and here are the 3 things I'd like to share that you would like to think about when lesson planning or implementing concept of advising. So number 1, pick a theme on learner autonomy for the activity. For example, goals, motivation, time management, or learning preferences. Number 2, think about the class activity format. You want to do individual work or peer work or group sharing, or maybe if you have time, you can do all of them. And number 3, think about the class environment, especially how you can create an atmosphere where students can engage in conversations about their learning, including language use. Do you want to use English, or if you want to focus more on reflection, you might want to use their L1 Japanese. Okay, so now I'd like to introduce some classroom activities that puts concept of advising in. Before that, I like to introduce the definition of autonomy by Leo Van Leer, that I always refer to when I talk about what we should aim for when designing an activity to foster learner autonomy. So here is his definition. So autonomy means having the authorship of one's actions, having the voice that speaks one's words, and being emotionally connected to one's action and speech within one's community of practice. This type of autonomy is dialogical, in Bakhtin sense, socially produced but appropriated and made one's own. Okay, so I like to reflect these ideas into my classroom activities. And the first activity is called Art Card Reflection Activity. So this is a fun and easy to do classroom activity and immediately grabs students' attention and leads them to reflect on their thoughts, feelings, and learning paths. You will need a stack of like art postcards like this on the slide that you see at like museum shops, or this is maybe in bookstores too. So the one I have here is a collection of famous art. So you'll put students into groups of 4 to 5 people, then place many art cards in front of them on the table. Then you will give some time and tell students to pick a card that best illustrates their current situation and feeling. So I just picked 3 for now, but students usually have like 20 choices. And each student will first describe the art on the card. They will have to describe the card and then talk about the reasons they chose that particular one. Here's a simple worksheet that I hand out to my students. To facilitate reflection, I have them write their thoughts on the worksheet before speaking. Beginning students could like benefit from being introduced to like vocabulary and phrases necessary to describe their feelings at the beginning of the class or the activity. Okay, and then I also ask after they finish talking, I asked each student to pick another card that best depicts their ideal future self, this time ideal future selves. So each student will then describe the art card and talk about it. Okay, so let me now share students' actual work. So this is how student described this. She chose this art card and she said this picture looks like information board. There are many pictures and things. It makes me confused a little. And she said the reason is now I have a lot of things I have to do. I always think about them and my brain confused. even if the picture describes such my brain. Okay, so that's what she chose. And I have another example for ideal future selves. So she chose this one. The woman stands up by herself. I think she wants to be rich. She must be independent too. And she wrote the reasons. I want to be rich and independent. I will study hard and work hard. Then I would be a strong woman like her. Okay, so you can see that students were able to express their ideal future self and then naturally connected and created goals and actions for herself. As an additional final step, students can think about what actions they can actually take to come closer to their future goals. So this activity can be done on the spot or as a project in your classroom. Okay, so that was some examples, but why is this activity good? Okay, so number one, because it facilitates learners to reflect on their current situation. They express their feelings, emotions in voice. And if they can do in English, that's even better. And they can connect that to their goals or actions that they need to take. And as you may have noticed, this activity can become a writing activity or speaking activity or grammar extension activity. If you have certain grammar points, grammar structures that you want students to practice, these are good way to integrate both grammar skills and the learner autonomy side. Okay, I have one more example project, so I'd like to share. So here's a different activity, and the students get this mission. So the mission in your group, create a board game of your university lives. Okay, so this can be done with any level, years, but for this particular activity, I worked with students in the third year. And the students work in group of 3 to 4 to create a board game of a 4-year university life. So this activity consists of 3 phases. First, making the game, which includes warm-up and designing. Second, playing the game. And third, displaying the game. And the activity structures has features of Van Leer and Walke's pedagogical scaffolding. So students start with the warm-up activity. So this is similar to what Yuri introduced about the motivation graph. So each learner draws an affective graph of their English study during the past 3 years in university. And they think about when they felt happy or motivated and when they were not happy. Okay, so here they connect the emotions and self. Then learners work in pairs to share their graphs by explaining to each other the high and low points of their graphs. After that, they get into groups and start designing the game. They decide together what to have on game spaces, like layouts and rules of the board game. And in the process, they talk about their struggles with time management or reflection about other learning issues. So various dialogues emerge in this process. So the game was generated as a result of the dialogical interactions among 4 learners, projection and sharing their voicing experiences. And learners with different experiences and emotions got together, listened to each other, and with these dialogues, they created one game. So here's the game. Okay, so now let's look at what learners put in these game spaces. Okay, so here are some of what they have written on the game spaces. Everything was decided by the students, and I just picked up on their English learning experiences. So stuck with extensive reading, go back 4 spaces, get a good TOEIC score, move forward 1 spaces. So it shows the values that they put into that. And it also shows their beliefs. Like, for example, studying long hours, moved forward 3 spaces kind of show that learners has a belief that longer studying time is better than shorter. Here are some example of game spaces starting with words that describe their emotions. Pretty powerful, like worry or suffer, feel depressed. And students also picked up on events unrelated to studying, like dying on here, move forward. So because in Japanese high school, dying here is not allowed. So it's like a freedom that they want by entering the university, and that means a lot to them. And so as you can see, these game spaces are loaded with voice and themselves, and it helps reflect on them, raise awareness about various factors in their learning process. Students are working with their peers and sharing all their feelings and thoughts. And in this process, they talk really a lot of things about their learning, and it's creating a supportive learner community. So now the game is ready. So what's next? Okay, so they play the board game. And what happens in this process? So players can experience other players' lives and emotion. And this kind of leads to another interesting dialogue. So here, a student landed on the space on breakup with boyfriend. Okay, so they have this dialogue. Having a boyfriend or not makes such a difference in my motivation to study. I've never thought about that. What about me? Yeah, probably. Definitely is good thing. Really, for me, having a boyfriend is not good for me. Well, I think really why? So they are reflecting, thinking about their exploring who they are as language learners and what is important and what makes me motivated. And they started to take ownership of their learning. So now I took this board actually to a different place in the Self-Access Center and laminated and put on the table. Then another interesting conversations are happening. So these are students unrelated to the class, okay? And they began dialogues talking to each other. I'm so glad to know I wasn't the only one struggling with extensive reading assignments. Looking at the game board, I know, so how many words have you read so far? Only 1,500, I can't concentrate. 1,000 for me, and you? 3,000. Wow, how do you do that? Any tips you can give us? I usually go to Starbucks and read English book. I feel so cool. Okay. So again, students are starting to talk about their learning by looking at these board games. So why are these good? Because we can provide many opportunities for students to talk about learning process. It's authentic English speaking opportunities. It facilitates their development of self-reflective skills and create a great learning community. Okay, and talk about their feelings with each other. Okay, enough of me talking. So let's try one activity that implements concept of advising. Okay. So everyone, let's reflect on our semester. So now we can see almost the end of this semester. And as same as last year, all of us probably had a bumpy road adjusting to the hybrid and online and face-to-face situations. So now everyone is at home connecting from distance, but imagine, please imagine that you are with your group sitting like this. Greens are people with a table in the middle. Okay, so I'll give you more image like this. Imagine you're sitting with other people like this. Okay, and now please pick one word, phrase, kanji that illustrates your semester. Anything. Do you have pen and paper like around you so you can write? It could be one letter of kanji or one phrase in English. I'll give you a few minutes for you to write that down. Okay, are people ready? If you are ready, can you show like a reaction sign. Can I? Oh, great. Okay, great. So I'm gonna move on. So what I'm gonna ask you to do is in your breakout rooms, first of all, you will have like 4 people in your rooms. Please say hello and say your affiliation, name and affiliation. And please decide a group leader. If there is no one wants to do it, then pick a person who's number 1 for their first name in alphabetical order. For example, if your name starts with A or B or C, you're likely to be the leader if no one volunteers. And please start go around and share, like show your paper. This is my word and why you chose that word. Okay. And please maybe use 2 minutes at most for each person. So the leader, if one person goes really off time, please tell them. Okay, and it's a workshop, so if you can join by turning on the camera, I really appreciate. Okay, so I'll randomly put people into groups. Okay, hold on. Okay, so are you ready? Hope you enjoyed. I hope you enjoyed sharing, although we didn't have much time. I hope you had a taste of what it's like. Ideally, the next step would be to write another word or kanji that best describes what you want to be like in your second semester. So a positive or maybe a different word. Okay. So this is also an activity that I do with my students and help them reflect about their learning. So merits of bringing in concept advising in classroom, that we can provide opportunities to introduce learner autonomy for all learners in classroom. And talking about learning is really rare. So we can make start the talk slowly in classroom and develop learner community. And these activities that I introduce and many others out there must not only raise awareness and facilitate reflection, but we also want to develop their language skills. So there are many ways to extend these ideas into classroom activities. So I'm looking forward to hearing if you try many of the different variety. I'd like to hear what everyone will be doing in classrooms. So I just introduced, so I have published some of the activities in these books, but one book is coming out. I wrote with Satoko Kato, and it's a Japanese book, but this is book intended for junior and high school teachers, where Satoko introduces advising skills and I write about various activities that teachers can do in classroom to foster learner autonomy. I believe that this learner autonomy education should start early, and this is one of our attempts to plant a seed in junior and high school setting. So it will come out in September. So if you're interested, please have a look. Okay, so thank you very much for listening to my part. And thank you for Kyoto JALT and JASAL for having this opportunity for 3 of us to share what we are doing. Okay, thank you very much.